Hey guys, my name is Shane Burkhall. I'm a junior here at Moravian studying English, and this past summer, Dr. Dunn and I did a project on disability identity. So, I'd like to take a few minutes just to tell you guys about the research that we did and what happened after we did that research. Alright, let's get started. The title of our project was Disability Identity, exploring person-first accounts of disability experience. We'll get to what all that means in a little bit, but first I just want to briefly talk about why I was involved in this research project. So, as you may or may not have noticed, I am in a wheelchair. I have a disability, actually a disease, called spinal muscular atrophy, which is a form of muscular dystrophy that basically makes my muscles waste away as I get older. And so I've been in a wheelchair my entire life. This isn't to say that my disability was the only reason that Dr. Dunn asked me to do this project with him, but it really helped the fact that I already kind of read about my disability identity online. And I was doing it without knowing it when I started a blog a few years ago called Laughing at My Nightmare. On there, basically all I do is tell funny and sometimes serious stories about my life and the things that happened to me because of my disability and then my reaction to them. So I didn't know that I was formulating or showing the world my disability identity until I actually started this project and learned what that was. So, what is disability identity? First, it's important to understand the construct of identity before explaining what disability identity is. Identity refers to conceptions of the self. It's how we express individuality, and it accounts for group affiliation. Identities contain traits, personal characteristics, roles, and are ties to social groups. For people with disabilities, disability identity entails growing up with a positive sense of self and a feeling of connection to and affinity or solidarity with other members of the disability community. Basically, it's saying, I have a disability, and that has an influence on my identity. Alright, now let's talk about what we actually did for this research project. So, basically, what we wanted to do was define disability identity and then pick out some key themes of disability identity from existing literature, explain what they are, and show how you can identify them in someone's identity. We chose to do this by conducting a large literary review, where basically what we were doing was surveying a variety of disability narratives, which are stories written by people with disabilities. So we read blogs, books, articles, websites, all kinds of things written by people with disabilities, and examined them to see if we could find some of these themes that we identified as the most important themes or the most prevalent themes of a disability identity. We then categorized some of these disability narratives based on which one served as the best example of the different disability themes that we identified. Our purpose for doing this was to make it so that our final product, the paper that we were writing, is an accessible way for people with and without disabilities to quickly learn about some of the themes of disability identity and to see some really good examples of what those themes mean in a real person's life. Here are 6 key themes that Dr. Dunn and I selected as the most important factors of a disability identity. First is affirmation of disability, which is basically the opposite of denying a disability, and that's really based on private beliefs and experiences. It's just having a positive and accepting feeling about one's disability. This factor of disability identity often emphasizes a feeling or desire to be accepted and treated like everyone else within society. The second theme is communal attachment. In 2004, two psychologists named Hahn and Belt did a study on people with disabilities. One of their findings was that disability identity often includes favorable feelings or a desire to be affiliated with a larger community of people with disabilities. They also found, which is something that I find pretty interesting, that many people with disabilities, when given the hypothetical opportunity to be cured of their disease or whatever disability they had, adamantly opposed that treatment and didn't want to be cured of their disability. Next is self-worth. And this is just simply the idea that one values oneself. It's dependent upon a person's ability to perform activities and tasks that society or themselves view as important. So, for example, I have some self-worth because I go to college, and society and my parents and the people in my life tell me that that's a worthy thing to be doing. A sense of self-worth also allows people with disabilities to see themselves as equal to people that do not have disabilities, and that's also an important part of disability identity. Pride, which is similar to self-worth, is exactly what it sounds like. It's being proud of one's identity, even in light of having a disability. So, society says that having a disability means that one is of a devalued quality. And having pride is accepting that fact that society says that having a disability means you're devalued, but being proud of the fact that you have a disability and you have a favorable identity despite that fact. After that is discrimination, and this is understanding or being aware of or even experiencing the fact that many people with disabilities are often the target of bias or prejudice or unfair treatment in daily life. This can be anything from uh, going to a restaurant and not being able to dine there because there's a step outside the building to more serious matters like being denied a job because the employer has some bias towards people with disabilities. It's something that many people with disabilities face on a daily basis. The final theme, and arguably the most important aspect of disability identity, is personal meaning. This theme involves searching for significance in disability, making sense of disability, and finding benefits of having a disability. It's a form of personal acceptance, and it emphasizes the assets that one has despite their disability, rather than idolizing normalcy or wishing that one didn't have a disability. Too Late to Die Young by Harriet McBride Johnson was one of the books that Dr. Dunn and I read for our project and chose as a perfect example of one of the disability identity themes. Harriet Johnson has a form of muscular dystrophy, much like my own, and throughout her memoir, she captures what it means to affirm her disability. There's a quote that I'd like to read which really shows this affirmation of disability. It goes, "I don't like the way the telethon depicts people with disabilities. It's all about stirring up pity, when we don't want pity. Jerry Lewis ought to be fired. He actually called people in wheelchairs half-persons." Johnson went on to have a very successful career in disability activism, which shows how she made a conscious decision to affirm her disability. Our purposes for this project were twofold. First, it was to inform people with disabilities and also people without disabilities how individuals live with and learn to live with a disability. Secondly, we wanted to provide a way for people with disabilities, as well as their family members, friends, caregivers, researchers, and therapists, a way to learn about the narrative experiences of disability. after we wrote our theory and review article, based on all this research that we did, we submitted it to Rehabilitation Psychology, and I'm very proud to announce that as of a few months ago, it was accepted and printed in the Journal of Rehabilitation Psychology. So that's all I have. I'd love to hear any questions that you guys have, and I hope that you guys enjoyed everything I had to say.